2, 1. I'm with Charlie Wollborg today. Charles, how are you, man?
Hello, hello, Michael. So good to see you.
One of my favorite people. Before we get started with the festivities, I want to remind you if you're watching on the video platform, you can certainly catch us on the Michael Angelo Caruso podcast, which is formally titled Talk to Me. It's on Podbean and iTunes and all the main platforms. And if you're listening, you can catch the video version on the Michael Angelo Caruso YouTube channel. Charlie Wollborg is the curator of TEDxDetroit, year 14 under his belt now. We're going to talk a little bit about that, how TED has changed through the years. It really is, and having participated in it recently, it's a remarkable community. I think I want to learn more about that. We're going to talk about creativity and where it comes from. Charlie and I are going to work together on a Rotary project coming up, a Rotary event. And also, I just think whatever comes to mind. We had the pleasure of breakfast a while back. I really enjoyed it. The time flew by. We just have so much in common, including a sordid musical past.
And amazing, the small world. We worked with one of the same producers. Like,
Yeah,
just such a tiny world. How all these threads of connectivity.
that producer being Kevin Holevar at Underground Productions, and Kevin used to be in a local band too. He played. Did you know he was like in a club band? What was the name of his group? Do you remember?
He's in Mainstream Drive now. I'm not sure what his old band was. He was in Clinton River Road, a country band.
I wish I could
He's
think
in
of
a
it.
jazz band. He's so incredibly talented.
And the band, everybody in the band was a virtuoso. They had it down. I don't know why they didn't take off. We'll have to have him on sometime and talk about it. But do you find
Well, it's
that
amazing. Luck really comes into this. You can do the hard work. There are some people who break out without the hard work. Kevin has always done the hard work and just hasn't gotten the break.
yeah,
But a lot of people, when you hear, oh, they're an overnight success, well, they were working at it. They were ready when that opportunity came.
yeah.
And Kevin, whenever the opportunity comes for Kevin, he's definitely put in the work.
You remind me of something that this whole musical background thing had me. I was in this gear big time a couple months back. I was listening to the Paul Simon project from Malcolm Gladwell. It's weird. It's a Paul Simon book, but it's not a book. It's just an audio, and it's an autobiography, but it doesn't cover his life. It's just conversations with Paul Simon. Did you get a chance to check it out?
I know, but I've heard good things about it, and I'm a huge Gladwell fan.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Gladwell's a lot like you in that, he's known as a writer, but now really enjoys the audio format. Do you enjoy the podcast as much as having a book? Like, do you get that same buzz? I'm sorry, I'm interviewing you, but
No, no, it's interesting. And as an attention monger, which is what all of us are, Kevin, you, me, anybody that was in the music business,
look
even
at me.
well, I like it, and I'm unabashed attention monger, and it's one of my motivators actually. I just do stuff and I like to think there's a currency in it. I'm just not doing it for just for the attention, but there's different types of attention. So the podcast is interesting because when people are listening, um, for example, if we weren't on camera right now, this wouldn't be as rewarding to me for some reason. It's a silly reason, but and writing a book is much different than a live presentation because it's a delayed reaction. You don't hear about what happened for people as a result of the book for months sometimes, maybe never. Whereas in a live format, you play a song 3 minutes and 30 seconds later, people are clapping. Oh, for me, what a nice surprise. But it's all
Well,
attention.
for me, so I take a lot of pride when I write something. I'm very proud of it because I feel like I've done it.
Mm,
And when I'm speaking on stage or performing on stage, there's that buzz that comes. I always joke that I'd still be singing, but the leather pants don't fit. So that's why I do a lot of speaking now.
right.
But when I'm on a podcast like this, I don't really get the satisfaction of writing, and I don't get the buzz of performing. So this is kind of empty calories for me, if that phrase makes sense.
And here I am getting a lot of attention from you, so I'm good.
And
So
I no, I
anyway,
enjoy the conversations, but there's that, I don't know what you call that extra little piece that of satisfaction that I get from either writing or performing that I don't get on a podcast, even though it's very enjoyable and I enjoy this, but it's not that I built this kind of
and how about
pride
this?
that comes
You and I
to.
both do a lot of free work. Um, I don't, I enjoy pro bono a lot, but there's nothing like getting paid for your content.
Oh,
And
absolutely, absolutely.
compensation is a form of attention.
But also, I think a lot of the times, uh, it's one for me, one for them, kind of thing. We see it with movie stars where they'll do a blockbuster to get paid, and then they'll do an art film. But
Right.
you and I will do a corporate speaking gig to get paid,
That's
and
right.
then we'll do a community gig because we want to reach people. So I think we all have that built into
Yeah.
us. Got
Unless you're
to eat, but I also want to give back.
unless you're Nicolas Cage and you know zero art films.
Okay, so my son's favorite movie this year, and I thought it was very good too, was The Enormous Weight of Talent. Did you get a chance to check
It's
that
on
out?
my list. We're probably gonna hit it this weekend.
Yeah, Nicholas playing Nicholas. It is.
Well, the whole
It's not a
idea is
great film, but
clever.
it's a great film. It's really weird. It's a lot
Like
of
a
fun.
selfie within a selfie. It's very creative.
Yes, yes, it's very meta,
Yeah.
very meta.
So back to Gladwell for a second. He says in the book, um, as kind of a riff on something that Paul Simon says during one of the interviews, he says that there are four, every origin story or every founder story has four key components. I'm going to read it here because I want to get it right. But the first one is that there's got to be a precocious visionary as the protagonist. So, me back in my music days, you during the TEDx days, it doesn't happen without you. You're the spark plug that makes it happen. Second thing you have to have is the visionary must serve an apprenticeship. There's got to be this cook, right? Could be a slow cook, as they say down south. It could be a microwave, but there's got to be a cook of some sort. Third component, magic occurs. And the fourth, and this is my favorite one because I think there's a lot going on in four. Four is the big break. And it sounds like it's a one off or a once in a lifetime thing or one and done. But the people that I respect the most are the ones that have been able to find big breaks over and over again. The people that are able to recreate themselves by finding another window to climb through. I'm thinking about people like Madonna, who is maybe done with her big breaks, or Paul Newman, a recent, a thing about Paul Newman's lifestyle, life and times. There are better examples than Paul Newman, but to survive in any industry now for 5 decades, you've got to find a way to redress.
I'm really inspired by Chris Stapleton. He's a country performer, and a couple of
Yes.
years ago he won Best New Artist.
Yeah.
And he's like, a grizzled 50-year-old guy. It's just like I'm still performing the same songs I've been performing my whole life. It's just instead of 10 drunk people at the bar, it's a stadium of 100,000
Or
people.
how
It's
about Dolly Parton? Stay with country for a
yeah.
second. Decades,
Oh,
right?
Dolly,
And she
Dolly
wrote,
Parton is she is Captain America in my opinion. I think we worship politicians and athletes. I really think there are very few people worthy of worship, but Dolly Parton's on that from a creativity standpoint, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from a community service standpoint. We have the COVID vaccine because Dolly Parton. We have kids reading all across America because Dolly Parton committed to send them a book every month. She just, she is a person of action. And
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 that's,
one of my old bandmates worked for her for years. He was her sound guy and said she is just she's never not nice. And he's worked for a lot of big artists, and that's not always the case. But Dolly Parton is someone we should be idolizing and modeling.
and the things you just mentioned weren't even her main attributes. Her main stripe, of course, is music. Why did you make that bold statement that she was responsible for vaccines? Did I hear you right?
Yeah, so she's built hospitals. She supports a lot of medical facilities down there, but she does a lot of philanthropy to research. And one of her grants was $1 million grant to, I believe, Vanderbilt University, which was some of the primary research on the RMA. I can't
Okay.
remember script the acronyms, but she funded some of that early work that led to the Moderna vaccine, which is the vaccine and booster that I took.
Yeah.
And as
Well,
Stephanie say it.
she recently got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which some people just said, harumph. But she's got the stripe now to perhaps pull down a Nobel Prize or a certainly lifetime achievement awards in all different disciplines. I read,
A fabulous actor,
that's right. I read,
any employee at Dolly Land gets free college.
oh,
Even
I
if
didn't
you're
know
a
that.
seasonal employee, you get free college.
Wow.
Like she's next level person.
Yeah. I read that let's see, the song I Will Always Love You, which Whitney did and took to the top, Elvis offered to record it. But in true Elvis style, he wanted publishing, some percentage of publishing, and she told him to piss off.
Wow.
So she missed, and Elvis, of course, was already established by then. And then I think she recorded it herself. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. A lot of people would have a chance to do business with Elvis and then go like this metaphorically and just disappear from the industry just because. Not Dolly Parton. She finds a way to get it done. She sells the song 50 years later in another genre to another person like the opposite of Elvis Presley. It's
Right.
stunning.
A contemporary artist today that I have a lot of respect for, Ryan Tedder. He's the lead singer of One Republic, but he also pens a lot of songs for other artists. He's done things for Beyonce and for he has a song in the new Top Gun movie where they're playing the Air Force football. That's a
Oh, yeah.
One Republic Ryan Tedder song.
Okay.
And he's also spun up a reality show where he works with young songwriters. So he's really firing on every creative cylinder and finding ways to record it himself, but also he realizes he makes more money when Beyonce does a song than he does the song. So
You run a company called Curve Detroit, and you've made the study of creativity almost your life work. Do you think creativity can be taught?
I think it's science and art. Like I think speaking is the same thing. We can train someone to be a great speaker, but if they don't have that charisma that you have, you go on stage and you just light up.
Yeah,
That you can't teach, but I can teach you how. I can teach you persuasive speaking and those talents. I
but
think creativity is the same thing. I
we
can walk
can't
you
teach
through a
people to be
creative
funny.
process. But we can teach them how to write a joke. But again, it's art and science. There are some funny people who don't have the discipline to be great because gosh, they have that quick wit and that charisma, but they don't have the rules.
We can teach people how to play guitar, but we can't teach people how to write a hit song. That's that edge, right? That creativity piece.
Well, I see it a lot. We do a lot of graphic design work, and I have worked with some art directors who are just technically, they know Photoshop and Illustrator and have pixel precision of anything you want to do, but they don't have the eye. And
Yeah.
then I have met people who have a great eye, but don't have the physical skills. You need art and science on so many things, medicine, teaching. How many brilliant people have you met that, can't teach because they can't connect with the audience? That
Yeah.
all those things, art and science, art and science.
Where does curiosity come in?
Well, I think that's one of the key building blocks of creativity, at least for me. I think creativity for me comes down to curiosity and cross pollination. You have to want to dive in. I am one of my greatest weaknesses is also one of my strengths. Wikipedia is my crack cocaine. I go on Wikipedia to search one thing, and 7 hours later, I'm naked and alone reading about Alice in Wonderland because everything, you just hypertext takes you down the path. But because I'm curious I get all these different connections in my brain.
Yeah.
And so when I'm talking to a doctor about a problem they're trying to solve, all these different connections that I've cross-pollinated through my curiosity can come back and give a new idea. because there are a lot of, in the creative business that I'm in, there are a lot of people who, I've made one good widget, now I'm just going to swap out the logo and sell it again and again and again. That old adage of when you sell hammers, everything looks like a nail. I definitely take a much more bespoke approach to creativity, where I want to, I would say, tell me the business goal, the audience, and the budget, and then we can come up with a solution, rather than walking in and saying, you need a TV ad,
Yeah.
which is, a standard solution that people will sell. So
You
sometimes
remind
it's a
me,
TV ad, sometimes it's a truck, sometimes it's a website,
yeah,
anything.
you remind me, I don't read the newspaper like I used to. Nobody reads the newspaper like they used to. But back in the day, you'd open up to the front page, and I would do this thing like they did on A Beautiful Mind, Russell Crowe in the Ron Howard movie, where he's writing on the glass window and he's making all these connections. How is this connected to this? You see the weather in the upper right corner, and then there's an economic thing down here because certain economic cycles follow cold weather, for example. But you'd never see that connection unless you were, curious about it and looking into it. And then this story over here is connected to this one down here. That's kind of how life is, isn't it? Not just every day, but Wikipedia is a great example. Stuff that's happening on Wiki is directly related to everything that's happening in that article. It's an amazing
Well,
web.
how many times have you been reading a novel or watching a show, and you'll stop and make a note to yourself, like, oh, this would be a great topic for here's an analogy I can use in my talk.
Yeah. Well, this notebook's
So
full of them.
it's providing yourself with fresh inputs. Fresh inputs all the time are going to yield new topics,
Yeah.
new innovations for your company, new promotions.
Yeah, I think so. Um, how long has TED been in circulation? The big TED.
So Big Ted started in 1984. It actually was a dinner party. A guy named Saul Warner thought, I have so many interesting friends. Be cool if they came together. And so, he'd bring an architect and an artist and an engineer together for dinner, and they would just share ideas. So the first TED in 84, someone from Lucasfilm showed off a CD-ROM to put a movie on, like a DVD. Someone showed some fractal art. Trying to think what one of the other big innovations, but it was all these different things. Of the TED originally stood for technology, entertainment, and design, which he thought three fields that drive innovation, that inspire innovation across the economy. So that's what that TED originally meant for. And then in 2009, they did the X program to kind of expand it out into other cities.
So coming up on 40 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And TEDxDetroit, just to put the dot over the I for the 14th year. And you put TEDxDetroit on the map because there was a vacuum that needed to be filled. And at the time, what they were looking for curators to the local TED events, which is where the TEDx comes from. That's capital T, capital E, capital D, small x, everybody. So when most people talk about getting a TED talk, they're really talking about getting a TEDx talk. It's a minor point, but I know TED's fervent about it because they want to protect the brand and keep that differential between maybe the main stage and these types of local platforms. What have you learned in 14 years, man? What's changed about the TEDx scene?
I don't know if a lot has changed. It refills my tank of optimism every year. That's
Yeah,
the reason I love it. It's just like, our mission is to shine a light on people who are doing cool stuff in all different fields. But when we started in 2009, the reason we started was because the news cycle was so bad. It's when Detroit was going through a bankruptcy, and we had the housing crisis and economic downturn. And I remember I was driving to my office, and I was listening to our local news radio station, and I had a panic attack. I was just like, oh my gosh, the world is ending when I'm listening to the news. And I got to the office, and things were fine. We were working away. Yes, there were a lot of people going through hard things, but not everything was bad. And it seems like the news loves to fixate on burning, bleeding, and bankrupt.
yeah,
And so we wanted to be a lifeboat. We wanted to be, look, let's shine a light. They're smaller stories. They're not, big corporations, but there are always people creating new things. And in an economic downturn, you actually see more innovation because people get downside. Now they have to put their idea in motion. I started Curve. I was an unwilling entrepreneur back at the turn of the century when 9/11 hit and all the money came out of marketing. I was jettisoned from a very comfortable job and had to go off and do this thing I always wanted to do, but until I got kicked out the door, I never started my own firm.
That's a lovely rhythm to life. You know, when the stock market's down, that's the time to buy. When there's a recession, more people go back to school. There's something about that vacuum, and then people finding a way to fill it up. In this case, the TEDx piece was good news in a world of bad news. I've also heard you talk about the mirror side of that, which is, I think you term it compassion fatigue, where we get too much. I guess it wouldn't be feel good exclusively, but we get too much of that soft side, the underbelly, or not underbelly, belly, and not enough of good hard reality. You know that it's time to bootstrap people. Is that a careful balance when you're curating the TED Talks?
I think that's something that every conference organizer should look at. If you have the same message over and over again, you tune out.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the reason news shows have multiple anchors and reporters is because if you're listening to that same voice all the time, it
Yeah,
starts to tune out.
it's true.
And also the different types of stories. So with TED, we are putting on a doctor and then a teacher and then a juggler and then a graphic designer because we're trying to go from right brain to left brain and stimulate all the parts of you. But I think as you're organizing a conference, if you're hitting the same note all the time, it creates discord instead of a symphony.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I was thinking about when I was considering having you come into keynote for this Great Lakes Rotary PETS event. PETS, everybody, stands for President's Elect Training Seminar. It's a kind of a misnomer because it's not a seminar per se, it's a weekend conference. It's a big one. 400 people come in from all over the area to, in this case, the Radisson Plaza Hotel in Kalamazoo. And we have some compassion speakers. We have some people who are Rotary specialists, Charlie, but we didn't have anybody that came from a different angle. Somebody maybe who wasn't even in Rotary to come in and infuse the audience with their brand of information, their brand of creativity, their brand of energy. And I was so glad that we were able to get together on an agreement for you to come speak to us because I think you're the perfect closer for us. I don't know that I've ever seen you speak in a formal setting. I guess briefly on the TEDx stage, but I love the way that you create your own ecosystem on stage. It's similar to what you used to do in the band, where you just have the microphone and you're roaming the stage and you're owning it. You're going to blanch at this comparison, but you remind me a bit of how Robin Williams used to work.
Oh, wow.
I don't think you have quite that rapid fire that only he had, but this disparity of ideas and the crazy left turns and it's you're manic but with a small m, as everybody is compared to Robin. Do you ever think about that in terms of pacing when you're putting your presentation together?
My pride point is speaking is no one has ever fallen asleep in one of my talks. So.
No, nobody's ever fallen
But
asleep. Yeah.
but my kind of if when people ask me to describe my thought process, it's really a tornado with a bunch of Dorothy's houses inside of it and a big Mickey Mouse glove behind my nose, reaches into the tornado, pulls out an idea, throws it out my mouth, and then while I'm talking about that, it reaches back in and grabs something else. So there are a lot of left field ideas that come out when I'm speaking. But
There's that creativity again, the Dorothy and the tornadoes and the well, tell me more about how people express creativity. What are some of the challenges people have? You have clients that hire you to do this because they're not able to. Nobody on their team is able to. Why don't we curate talent the way we could, talent in terms of creativity in the way that we could? What do you see as the impediments to this?
I think one of my favorite authors is Seth Godin, and he talks about the purple cow.
Yes.
And his analogy is, you know, when you're driving on vacation, when you guys first see a cow in the car, everyone in the car is like, cow, cow. And then after, you know, several other farms, no one's noticing anymore. But if you come over a hill and there's a purple cow, oh my gosh, a purple cow, people notice it because it's different. And I think outsiders are able to come in and spark new ideas is because we haven't been looking at the cows all the time. So we're looking at things with fresh eyes. So anytime, like if you're hiring a new hire, before they get indoctrinated in all of your processes, ask them if, you know, as an outsider, what they would do, because you're going to get that fresh, that kind of idiot's delight where there may be some, oh, well, no, we would never do that because of this. They'll get a lot of things wrong, but they'll help you see things in a new light. And
Yeah.
that's why I think when I go into a new company, I'm able to help them birth new ideas because I'm an idiot when it comes to their institutional knowledge.
Yeah. You remind me of when we used to travel. We had a strange family. We played cows with license plates.
I love the license plate game. My wife and I still play that. Her eyes are much better than mine, so
Yeah.
I'm at a huge disadvantage.
Creativity is a form of expression. Expression has gotten weird lately because we live in sensitive times. I know you're struggling with Twitter these days, as a lot of people are. You know, is this the place for me? Is it nutritious conversation and exchanges like it used to be, or is it grandstanding and virtue signaling and misinformation in an echo chamber? Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, you know, if you can curate Twitter right, you can find whatever you want on Twitter. You know, as I love to say, when you're going through your day, you'll see a million tragedies and a million triumphs. It's what are you going to fixate on? I think the problem with how my Twitter was set up, it was very broad. And so now I see as many people scoring internet points and being proud of that rather than making intelligent points. And I think that kind of one-upmanship by putting people down isn't good for my brain and my psyche. As I scroll through my social feed now, I get more sad than delight.
Yeah.
Or do you feel it's as positive as it was for you? Like I always felt social was a very additive thing for me in the early days, and now I feel like it's much darker. So maybe I just need to prune my branches. What are you experiencing?
I think everything's a little darker than it was a few years ago. Um, I don't know if it's because I mean, again, you look at the big picture, a lot of things have changed, you know. We've become less formal as a society. What does that mean? Well, there's less etiquette. There's less structure to our language. There's less form. And so what happens when all that stuff kind of goes away, we become, if you go far enough down the spectrum, you know, eventually we all turn into savages again, where there's just it's all anarchy and martial law. I do think the slider's been moved to a great extent, and you're even seeing it in foreign countries. We call them foreign countries over here, but other countries where they've almost mimicked what was happening in the United States, where things were taking a darker tone in countries that you never heard those kind of problems before. I mean, just this week, they hung a protester in Iran, in the public square or wherever. But Iran has always done that kind of shit, you know. But you're starting to see, I think, this darker, and look at things like violence in movies. Um, Violence is everywhere now. Violence is in video shorts on Facebook. I'm watching something that looks like it might be mildly interesting, and it turns into a fist fight, a brawl in the street. I didn't want to watch that. It was just there. It never used to be there before.
You know, Coyote sure got the shit kicked out of him a lot when I was watching cartoons as a kid. So
Yeah.
Daffy Duck was always taking his role. So I think violence has always been there. It's more real now. It looks more real.
Mm.
Do you think this is a slide, or do you think it's a pendulum? You know, because society often will do this, but
A slider or what?
a pendulum. Are we gonna come back up, or are we watching the fall of Rome?
I don't know, man. I think if it's a pendulum, it's just swinging one way all this time. Darker,
Yeah, I
darker,
know it's a very big arc.
cruder, cruder, more blood, more graphic, more sex, more of everything, right? And
Well,
then
with fashion, if you watch the hemlines on skirts, you know, fashion designers go back and forth because they want to sell more skirts.
yeah, I mean, we used to call the doctor doctor. We used to call the president president, and then his last name. Now we're calling the president by his first name. Uh, and I understand language changes and mores change and things loosen up. Um, and you know, I'm of a certain age. I'm also interested in what's happening with younger generations. How the younger generations, they never grew up with any of these values that you and I are talking about now. We call them values. They don't even address them as values. They just say that's how it used to be. It's not even a value for the people coming up. So it's like like everything's going to be recast. As, by the way, you and I, my generation, recast it and made it nearly unrecognizable to some older people when we were coming up. I guess I knew I was going to experience this, and as we're living longer, we may experience it a few more times. I will
My
say this.
biggest concern with sorry, go ahead.
I will say this: as dark as it seems to be sometimes, this is absolutely the best time to be alive. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience, and I wonder sometimes about how we're going to, you know, navigate some of these potholes, and how big those potholes can get before we actually stop driving cars. I worry about stuff like that, the big changes.
But you know, I look for, you know, the Dolly Partons, you know, the people who are famous for doing great things
Yeah.
versus people who are famous for being famous. I think one of the most inspiring young entrepreneurs right now is Mr. Beast, who's a YouTuber who, you know, now reinventing restaurants and reinventing food and subscription businesses,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and is a multi-millionaire by doing remixes of culture. He takes culture and turns it into a new reality show and reinvests, and he builds quality stuff and usually has a social good to the things he's doing. So I think that's much better than, you know, 20 years ago we were all concerned with what Paris Hilton was doing just for being famous, and we thought that was kind of the end.
Well, we've
And
got our
now, you know,
new versions of Paris Hilton. You know,
right?
um, do you think that like optimism has been kind of a sub theme here in our talk today. I remain optimistic even in the face of some of the things that are happening. I just think things work out. And I'm a fan of Adam Smith, you know, the old British economist who was fond of this. He might have even curated the theory himself, the invisible hand. I think it was initially meant for economics that you can fiddle, you can have the government fiddle with economics as much as you want. Eventually, this invisible hand, which is like the public good or the public force, fixes it, say through re-elections or elections that take out the people that are mucking up the gears. And I think there's an invisible hand too in communication. There's an invisible hand, back to the Twitter subject, you know, with Elon's purchase of the company. People are voting with their feet. Advertisers are voting with their feet. They're sending a very strong message about what they'll tolerate on this platform, which, by the way, is a business platform. It's a business entity designed to turn a profit. And I know that Musk at least has to make 44 bill back in order to make this worth his effort. I think there's a course correction that happens there that's just lovely. Do you see that too, or no? Do you think people just will?
I take solace in the fact that from the earliest times, people have been saying the end is near. You know, the early followers of the church wanted to be buried. So they sat up in their graves, they would be facing Jerusalem because they were sure Jesus was coming back in their lifetime. So even though we say, "Oh wow, things are just worse and worse," in the 50s, everyone thought the end was coming, and in the 60s, the end was coming. 70s, the end was. That's always going to be there. What I think Elon is one of the most inspiring people around. I wish he was focused on cars and rockets and tunnels, where I think he does the most societal good.
Right.
Unfortunately, what he's learned in today's culture, being a troll gets you the camera. And when you have the camera, when you have those eyeballs, you have the control of the news cycle. So he's playing the game. He's being provocative on purpose.
It is gamesmanship. Same thing when he smoked pot on Rogan's
But
show,
right,
and he got rewarded with all those clicks and views and media coverage and stuff, right? And then the new twist now in today's society is, because everybody's a publisher, what happens when he tweets something about stock price of his company, or just the future of his company, and the stock market notices it, right? I mean, I think he's on constant notice from the New York Stock Exchange for just being edgy all the time. But
I think he's going to be fine. I think Twitter will come back. I think he'll find a way to add in a payments platform. He's very good at coming up with business. I just wish he wasn't using the strategy of the moment to be an ass.
Yeah.
It's certainly the easiest way to get attention. It's not the only way.
Right.
So be more Dolly, less Elon.
Who's your
We need points of light. We don't need points of poop.
Yeah.
So,
Who's your favorite comedian?
oh gosh, I love stand-up comedy. That's almost an impossible question. I think Chappelle is outstanding. I think Brian Regan is phenomenal. Kathy Madigan.
Oh wow, she's been
Bill
around.
Burr. Bill Burr is so good.
Bill
What
Burr.
about you? What are your favorite stand-ups?
I like all of those guys. I loved Ron White. He's cooled off quite a bit. What I loved about Ron was the timing. He just took his time. And
Master storyteller.
yeah, and the cigar and the sip of the drink.
The glass. Yes.
It was old school. Like
Yes.
George Burns had that kind of affectation where
Right.
Burns had the cigar as well, and the one liner, and then he'd puff. He'd wait for you to catch up with him.
Yeah.
Because the thing with toilet humor and easy gets is there's no curation, there's no development. It's like a little poof bomb. But intellectual humor, or something you have to work at a little bit, there's a timing issue, and you have to allow for the clock to tick a little bit. Burr is interesting like that too, because he'll take you down into it, and he keeps you down there. It's like holds your head underwater while you get it, right? And then he'd come back up. So he's got a kind of a different way to work. I'm not a fan of the I guess initially it's interesting. Gallagher just died. For those of you that don't know, he was very. I guess he married an intellectual type of comedy with slapstick. This is the guy that sledgehammered the watermelons at the end of his show. You could watch that a couple times and then you go, okay, I get it. Because you've seen one watermelon.
But he was incredible with language, though.
That's what I meant. The intellectual.
I would put him right up with Stephen Wright as far as his writing, but that the wordplay never got the laughs. Like, now I'm going to break shit.
He never ended the show with wordplay.
No. But it's funny, but we only talk about the watermelons. How many watermelons did he kill? Watermelons around the world were so glad when he passed away. But he was a very clever writer, and just kind of couldn't get a hit song from the words, so he got it from the melons. That's so indicative of our world, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's such a pleasure to visit with you, man. I can't wait to work with you.
I can't wait. Can't wait for March for pets. It's going to be This is going to be a really good event.
Yeah, I think so. I know it'll be fun working with you, and I think the audience will get a big kick out of you. For most of the people watching this video or listening to this podcast, the date won't mean anything. But if you happen to see this video before March of 2023, this is the Great Lakes Rotary PETS event, everybody. We're going to bring in about 300 presidents-elect. These are people that are about to take the helm at their Rotary Club, their local Rotary Club. They're coming in from Michigan, the northern part of Indiana, some Canadian clubs. Every time I say Canadian club, I think about whiskey. Not that kind of Canadian club. But you'll be a
It's
breath
an
of
old
fresh
trick
air.
a photographer taught me. If you want someone to smile, instead of saying smile when you take the picture, say whiskey, because whiskey forms your mouth into a most natural smile. Whiskey.
Speaking of, I love that. Speaking of photography, I was looking up the other day in Wikipedia, I was looking up why we say cheese. Do you know?
No.
I got distracted and never finished, but I'm making a mental note now to finish that up. Why do we say
Oh
cheese?
no, no.
There's a
Cheese. Does
photographer in
cheese
town.
stretch your mouth? I don't know.
There's a photographer in town that, well, two photographers come to mind. One does not want you smiling. He wants you either right before you smile or right as you're leaving the smile, because this is not natural. But on
Right.
your way to this, apparently.
It's really good. Right.
But
I
my other
love
guy,
candids much more than posed. Yeah.
yeah. And this other guy is very clever because he will not take a picture of you if you're looking at the camera. He only wants candids because those are the most natural of all. I mean, as somebody who's highly photographed, I can tell you, I get sick of the pose all the time, and the hand. It's also artificial. It's like we're monkeys, trained monkeys. And the camera, smile, and come in for that hug, even if you just met the person a second ago, and sometimes you can see that on their faces. Oh my God, this person's way too close to me. Well, it's good to visit
Funny
with
when
you,
you
man.
look through selfies, you can see the same pose again and again and again. Like, this is what I know works.
Yeah, we'll get it right this time.
Yeah.
Charlie Wollborg, everybody. He's all over social. His company is called Charlie Curve. Easy to find on the internet. Go hunt him down and have him look at your projects, your creative projects, particularly if it involves graphic design or branding. This guy's a genius. And of course, if you're in the Southeast Detroit area, you want to go visit TEDxDetroit number 15. It'll happen. You're going to move it up a bit in the calendar year next year?
It'll be in the fall of 2023. We'll be back.
Okay, very good. Thanks for
15th
all
year. This will be a special year. So
thanks for all the good work you do in the community and beyond. I appreciate you.
thanks so much for inviting me on. This was fun, Michael.